Even if I don't like someone, I'm still going to help pull them out of the ditch. And even if they don't like me, they're going to do the same. Uh, this was said to me at a country fair where I now live in Maine over the weekend. And it felt really pertinent to today's episode of our show. So I wanted to start with that. It was the couple that we were talking with. The gentleman had been, they were pretty elderly, and he had been living in Maine like all his life in some of the most northern areas of Maine. And his wife had joined him, an amount of years later, and they really love where they live. Um, Definitely an older couple. And I just loved the wisdom in even when we don't agree, we still help each other out. And in fact, it's funny because they're not the only people that I've heard that from. That comes up quite a bit. Like people here in the rural areas, especially where there's not a lot of assistance. There's not really a lot of AAA calling here because do you even have cell service where you've gone into the ditch, right? Um, if you come across someone, you help and know that there's a trust that they'll help you too, even if they don't like you. Um, so that felt important to bring in. Welcome back to the show. Uh, when we left off, I know last week I had really just wanted to celebrate with you that we did it, that my husband and I have now we're settled, I think was really what I was expressing in that video in this home that we've been planning to move it, closing on, moving into, getting settled in, and we're finally here. And the episode before that, I've been in this season been sort of bringing you along on the journey of how we manifested this because I have a friend who said, if you have any advice on how we can manifest this, what we want, which is, a lot of acreage and a lovely home, I'd love to hear it. So I thought, I know what I'm going to do for this second season of the show. And because it's definitely has not been a straight line, right? And so in the first couple episodes, I've been sharing about how um we set an intention, or at least I remember setting an intention about a year before we moved in, or that I wanted to bring some intention to this part of my life. And that meant living where I really wanted to live. And my husband felt the same. So we sort of embarked on this journey together. And the second thing that happened that felt of significance for our purposes in terms of staying true to ourselves is my husband asked to see a marriage counselor, a couples counselor. And uh, you can I would reference the past episodes of this season if you'd like to hear more about that. I think where we are now in the narrative is that I was able to get some support on um, being okay with the idea of seeing a couples counselor because my fear had been that someone would try to change me or my thinking to sort of not that I would be talking myself out of who I am and why, I am this way and what I really want being valid, right? And then I remember having the thought of, but I just found myself like I can't, I don't know what to do. And getting the support, it's funny because it didn't in the end come from a marriage counselor or a couples counselor. What 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 we were able to do really well, my partner and I, was gain some trust in ourselves and know that we could support each other from a good place inside of ourselves. And that doesn't happen without support. So really the last one was, how did I get supported to be able to do this? And, some of my learning is that I am not my thoughts. I have thoughts, Just like I have hair, but my thoughts are not me. I think of myself as the indwelling being in this body, you know, um, and someone who, um, I've seen a lot of growth in myself in terms of feeling worthy of having what I would like, and knowing that I can trust myself to do that, and also to support others because I'm okay inside. So that's kind of where we are now in this. And I wanted to, I think this is I would like to be able to talk in here about in today's episode about how that's shown up. Um, and we're still pretty early on in the journey of getting this house, of moving in here. Um, and the serendipities along the way that have just been crazy. So we'll get there. Um, this is the basis for those. And in fact, I can remember along the way hearing from other people who were looking to sell their home, and the right buyer came along just at the right time, or people who had been offered, who were just expressing a wish of wanting to move to New Hampshire, for example, and but not wanting to let go of the house they had in Massachusetts. And somebody invited them to be a professor at their college, and oh, there's a house attached to that. It's like, so they could have what they wanted. And all along, I had been wondering, like, what will ours be? Like, if we can do this, if we can really stay steady with the trust and the confidence that it will all work out as it's meant to, what will that mean? I'm excited to find out. And we're still really in where we are in this series is still really early on in that journey. And today, the sort of the train stop, the way stop that we are at, I'm thinking of as of regaining my curiosity and then perspective to be able to move forward or progress. Um, I was feeling so back in probably October, and even November of 2024 is where we are now in the narrative. And it was in September 2025 that we bought the house. So that just happened, pretty recently. Um, and at the time in the autumn of 24, uh, getting the support to remember that I can trust myself, that I'm not my thoughts, that I can, in fact, be curious about my life partner and what he is interested in, how he wants to create his life. I could do that with still knowing inside that um, I could get what I wished as well, or at the same time that he was. And part of that was making sure that, or being curious about what was his perspective so that I could understand it and um, see how it, you know, ran along with my own, and um, being able to just have that curiosity and that perspective um, felt really good. And so I think the, event wise, the next thing that happened was we met our realtor. So I have a friend who works for a nationwide realty company. And I said to her, like, do you know, is there anyone that you could recommend that could help us sell our home? And she sent me the perfect person. She said, I don't know anyone that I can think of like offhand, so I'm gonna ask some colleagues. And then when she came back, she gave us there were three possibilities, one of very high intensity, one of very low intensity, and one of medium intensity. And we chose the one who is described as of medium intensity. And she was an absolute gift. Um, she helped us remember why we were doing what we were doing. And in fact, when we first met her, it was October of 24. And in other words, it was nearly a year before we purchased. And before we purchased this house, and it was 10 months before we sold our home. Like, so it was a long game. We didn't know how long it was going to be at the time, but it was a long game. So she wasn't someone who was interested in a quick sale. She was really interested in serving us, her clients. And we had thought that she was going to be asking us or looking at our home in Massachusetts and assessing it for how much value it would have, and that this had happened to us in the past where someone basically came through our home and said, well, you're going to have to redo your whole kitchen. It's unacceptable. Like you won't, it will not sell. The value will not be there. There's all these other things that you need to fix that, we, when we were speaking with that person, with that realtor, what we were feeling was, well, we have this crappy house that we won't be able to sell anyway, even though we're in this really hot market. And it had us almost giving up. And so that actually, I'm glad that came up because that I wanted to provide some context as to what it was even like to ask for the support of a realtor because we'd been feeling so um, nervous that our house was not valuable, even though we'd spent 20 years investing in it and making the systems better and, um, growing it, finishing things in it, all the sort of home improvements that we had made. We went into this meeting with this realtor, um, thinking that we had a crappy house and that she was going to tell us that too. And instead, she sat with us and she asked us, why do you want to move to Maine? And my husband talked about the fishing and the peace and quiet. And I spoke of the stars and the peace and quiet. And we were remembering that we'd had this idea when we got married, 27 at the time, years prior, that it would be really fun to live in Maine on 40 acres with a house in the middle. And I don't know, I don't know if that had come up for my husband, but it hadn't come up for me too recently, that idea of living on 40 acres with a house in the middle. And and our realtor said, wow, she said, I love this. This is not, you're not moving because you have to move. It's not that your house is too small. It's not that you need to move for any other reason except that you really want to move. She said, this is about your soul. And Ben and I just looked at each other and we were like, it is. And she gets it. And she gave us a sort of next step that no one had ever given us before, um, when we'd spoken to other realtors. And that was find out what you can afford to purchase in Maine. Like get pre-approved for a loan so that you can go up there, you can look at things and you can know what you're looking for. And Maine is such a big state. The other request was, or the other invitation was figure out approximately where you want to live. She helped us. She found and recommended a realtor up here that again just turned out to be absolutely a miracle. This woman, like they just both of our realtors really were working for us and really had the motivation to help us get what we wanted, even if it took however long it was going to take. Like which felt amazing and was the opposite of what we'd been expecting. And so Ben and I started to feel like, oh wow, we could really do this. And we were really on the same page about wanting to do it. Like I could understand his perspective, he could understand mine. Here we have this sort of person who's invested in helping us get where we want to go, and um, knowing or trusting that what that meant was that it would all work out. We weren't going to know how it was going to work out until it had, but that it was all going to work out great. And she'd been a realtor, and before that, she'd worked in corporate as supporting salespeople as a coach for a long, long time. And so I just got such good coachy vibes from her. She really got it, and she knew how to help people. In fact, over the time that we were working with her, there's a saying by the guy who wrote The Little Prince, Le Petit Prince, which is this like he's a Frenchman. He wrote the book in French, and I remember reading it in high school. And his name is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and I know that's not a great pronunciation of it, but he has this saying, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's basically, if you want to build a boat, if you want to build a ship, don't call out people or hire people to start chopping down trees and shaping the wood that will become the boat. He said, instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And that's basically what our realtor did for us. Is she herself had a goal, right, of supporting, of generating income for herself through the sale of our home. But well, not but, and she helped us work together in such a way that we were envisioning what we wanted rather than concentrating only on that house and that house selling. She wanted us to actually achieve what we'd been trying to achieve for decades, and she knew that that would be great for all of us. So, um, so to be able to get the support to see that, and Ben and I are sort of working together to really be open to what could be next, felt like the sort of curiosity part of this, um, and the ability to take each other's perspective, is the other thing that I really wanted to share about in today. So then what happened was in January, we started turning our attention to, okay, might we be able to, for example, remodel our kitchen? Like, we don't have to do it maybe beyond our means. We don't have to feel like it has to be a luxury kitchen that, cost more than we could afford, or more than what we really wanted to do was make sure that it was in line with the value of our home, so that when we sold our home, we weren't we were getting the value and not exceeding it, or not the we weren't diminishing the value that we would receive because we'd put so much money into the remodeling. And I remember there was this one day in January of 25 where we now met with a contractor. We really liked him. We decided that we would work with him to remodel our kitchen and our sunroom. We hadn't talked about cost yet. It was more about what are the possibilities here, and what are we trying to do. And he invited us to go to like a flooring and uh, countertop kind of store to see what they had and just to talk about what would we like. And I remember the contractor shared that butcher block was big right now. Like, apparently butcher block countertops are a thing. And I love butcher block countertops, and my husband does not. And we went and we were looking at the different options, and one of them that came up was butcher block. And I remember having this feeling of like gearing up to be all passionate about why we should get butcher block countertops, and basically getting into an argument because my husband clearly did not want them. And it's funny, this house that we were preparing to move away from, um, I remember sort of having this feeling of like, well, all right, it's time for me to dig in my heels and get this butcher block countertop. It's the only thing, right? And then the thought came into my head, I love my husband more than I love any countertop. And in fact, I said that out loud. I said, I love you more than I love any countertop. And I was able to find kind of the wherewithal inside to let go of it's butcher block or nothing. Um, and that was a really useful approach through the whole thing. I mean, the butcher block countertops were like the tip of the iceberg when it came to things you could disagree with your spouse about in terms of remodeling, selling, purchasing, etc. A home, right? And so I wanted to relate it back to this idea that that these folks at the country fair that we were just at was sharing, which was, you know, even if even if I come across someone whose car has driven into a ditch in the middle of winter and I don't like them, I'm going to help them out of the ditch. And I know that that they will help me out of the ditch as well, if I'm the one in the ditch. And to me, what it really comes back to is like trust. Um, Trust in ourselves, I think, trust in um, the in any relationship. I mean, um, there's a very practical, there's a real practicality to knowing that even if you stood up and disagreed and fought with each other at the last town meeting, or even if your property borders theirs and they're doing things on their property that you don't like, or even if they have completely different values politically or beliefs politically than you do, that you're still human beings and you still exist uh, and are worthy. um, that's there's a kernel of that that's at the heart of all of this. Um, because for me to be able to say, okay, I trust in this relationship so much that if I end up uh, not getting the kind of countertop in this example that I wish for, that's really okay because there are things that are more important than that countertop. Um, and you know, I'm trying to think where to go from there because there's other things that that I've been reflecting upon, but I think I'm really going to leave it there. Like I would love, I know, here's the last thing that I wish to say about it. What happened after I let go of the butcher block countertops was this. I discovered that there were other amazing kinds of countertops to appreciate and to open to. That if I had been sort of clenching my fists and hanging on to the idea of only one countertop, I would have been in a very different place in my relationship than I am because I would have been berating my partner for not agreeing. And I would have completely missed, the kind of countertop that we did end up with, which was fascinating and really cool, and perfect for what we were moving out of, right? And then what we have here in the home that we moved into is also perfect, even though it's not butcher block. Like I'm only when I am able to soften and allow myself to see other perspectives and get out of my own perspective to do that, because that's really the only way to really be able to do that. Um, do things go really well? Because otherwise, I'm just fighting. I'm clenching. I'm fighting. I'm angry. This, to be able to say I love you more than I love any countertop, meant a whole world of beauty and options that would not have been available to me if I was hanging on to only one kind. And carrying it to the other example, it's been a long time since I was in a ditch, um, or since I've seen others in a ditch. I wonder, I'll be curious about if my experience of living in Maine involves, people in ditches more often than it has for the last several decades, right? And I am not going to be wondering if this person disagrees with me about something, even something that I feel is really important in my heart. Because the most important thing is this is a human being in need, and I can support that. I can help, um, because that's who I am. I trust that that is the direction. And having the curiosity and the perspective to see that is what I really want to share today with you, not just in the context of us finding and manifesting our dream home and our dream property, which is exactly what happened because of that, but also because, you may not be wanting to manifest your dream property, right? But I bet there's something inside you that you are wishing for that could come true. There's a dream that you have, maybe multiple dreams that you hope for and wish for. And I I hope to spark some inspiration about how that's possible, even if it isn't the same exact thing that I wanted and then got, right, or then created. I think these are, I like the idea of like my specific situation being able to help others in whatever the context is. So hopefully this has done that. And I appreciate you for being here, for watching. Um, and yeah, I'm wishing you well. I um, create a, a, a community in the school platform. It's called Dreamers and Doers, and it's for people who have supported others for quite a while and are opening to the idea of bringing that same care to ourselves. And I use the word ourselves very deliberately because I'm one of the people in the community. It's a growing community of folks who are kind and supportive of each other and are discovering that there are others in the world who also have amazing dreams, as do they, and that have some company along the way to find some like-minded souls is a really lovely, lovely thing when you are on your journey. So if that is of interest to you, the link is in the show notes. Um, Thanks again for being here today, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.